The land acquisition bill may be heading for a quiet burial. Sources tell your channel that the government is not keen in pushing this controversial legislation in its current form, given the stiff opposition from many a stakeholder. After a meeting with Chief Ministers, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley said the centre will accommodate their views before taking a final call, without giving a straight answer on whether the bill will be dumped. Remember, the ordinance on land acquisition will expire on the 1st of September.
Our sources tell us that the land bill at the national level has been shelved for good. Instead, the government is now putting the ball in the courts of states. The centre hopes that the intense competition among states to woo investments will force them to enact industry-friendly policies, while at the same time keeping the interests of farmers alive. Also, with some of its top ministers facing taint charges, the Modi government will prefer to avoid a confrontation with the opposition ahead of what we are calling a stormy monsoon session. The big exclusive on land acquisition is our top story on Business Tonight. We move ahead with the voice of the day, Arun Jaitley.
एक बहुत बड़ा सुझाव मुख्यमंत्रियों का था कि केंद्र प्रयास करे कि एक आम राय बनेगी। राज्य इंडेफिनेटली उस कंसेंसस की प्रतीक्षा नहीं कर सकते, और अगर आप कंसेंसस से नहीं इसको पारित करवा सकते तो फिर केंद्र राज्यों पे छोड़ दे। जो राज्य तेजी से प्रगति करना चाहते हैं वो अपने स्टेट लेजिस्लेशंस इसमें सजेस्ट करे और केंद्र उन स्टेट लेजिस्लेशंस को अप्रूव करे।
All right, Gandhi Dwivedi is joining us with exclusive details on that story. The Finance Minister essentially laying out what we perhaps calling the red flag as far as land acquisition is concerned, Gandhi. But what are you picking up? A final decision taken? There will be no central land laws?
Absolutely, Supriya. There will not be an overarching land law that the centre will push ahead with. In fact, top sources in the government indicate that they will not, in fact, push the land bill any further. Let it lapse, let the land ordinance lapse, which is going to lapse on the 1st of September, after which the government will not push at all as far as the land bill is concerned. It's important to note that this decision comes at a time when the government is already battling serious charges on a lot of fronts as far as the senior ministers are concerned. There is a crucial parliamentary session that begins next week, and of course land is going to be the biggest lever that opposition parties will use ahead of the state assembly elections. Bihar goes to polls in November this year, and there are several assembly elections lined up later as well, and the government does not want to be seen to be taking sides with the corporates and of course not siding with the farmers' interests, especially when it is poll time, which is why the government is extremely conscious of its pro-farmer, pro-poor image, and the BJP in fact is very clear it will not push ahead with the land bill, not at the cost of an electoral defeat, which is why top sources tell us in the government that it has already reached out to all BJP-ruled states. Chief ministers have been informed that they need to roll out the red carpet to woo investors as far as easier land norms are concerned. It is now going to be totally on the state's prerogative to really ensure there are easier land norms. But as far as the central leadership is concerned, it's a huge U-turn, given that easier land norms was one of the first big promises that Narendra Modi made to India Inc. when he of course became the Prime Minister last year.
What happens to India Inc. then, Gauri? How will land acquisition happen for corporate India if the government doesn't make changes to the law, doesn't come up with a fresh law?
Sandeep, it is now totally up to the states. It is expected, the government hopes that there will be certain kind of competition between states that will ensure that they have easier land norms to really woo industry. But of course, this is definitely going to be a setback as far as the industry is concerned, because there is no central leadership, central law that is really going to be pushing ahead as far as decision making is concerned. It is expected that decision making will be slower. State government machinery is not geared towards faster clearances, faster decision making. So it's definitely going to be a hit as far as India Inc. is concerned. But the government hopes that given that BJP ruled states will be given some sort of a direction by the central leadership, and given that there will be some sort of a competition between state governments, land norms may not be that big a hurdle as far as India Inc. is concerned.
All right, Gauri Dwivedi breaking that big story right here on ET Now. The government likely to give a quiet burial to the land bill. Let's get you an industry view as well. Niranjan Hiranandani, MD of Hiranandani Group and a commentator of the real estate sector, joins in with a quick perspective. How big a setback is this going to be for the industry, given that land acquisition is indeed the most critical teething problem?
I don't think it's a big problem for the real estate industry, but I think it's a great problem for the country and the infrastructure business. I think the Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridor, the acquisition for the purposes of ports, power plants, Other infrastructure is going to be much more bigger and more important, because the time frame of the projects which Mr. Narendra Modi wanted to take is pretty short. So if the acquisition is going to take now 2 years and 3 years before you can acquire the lands, then I think the projects are all going to get delayed. I think there's a challenge to Mr. Narendra Modi in terms of developing it. Of course, he has a great hope. He hopes that the states in which the acquisitions will take place will actually make the modifications which he wanted to do at the central government. But he was politically uninclined to do it because he's got the Bihar elections, he's got other things. So I think the polity prevented him to take it at the national levels. So politics has won, economics has failed.
Mr. Hiranandani, considering that infrastructure development is one of the big focus areas for this government and it was a big poll promise, are you surprised with this decision, and do you actually expect infrastructure to be the big casualty by the government's U-turn of sorts on the land acquisition bill?
I don't know actually, but the answer is yes and no. In the places where actually land acquisition has already taken place, there should not be a great problem. And for ongoing projects where land acquisition has been actually initiated and done, may not be a problem. But where land acquisition has not been initiated and the new laws are become applicable, I think there's a challenge. However, I think Mr. Modi hopes that the state governments will make a difference in the various states where election is not round the corner, and they will follow the ideas of what changes he wanted to bring at parliament level. I think will be followed by many of the states, especially where BJP is ruling.
Mr. Hiranandani, land acquisition is a state subject, and now that companies will have to only engage with state governments, do you expect slow decision making in this and perhaps a return of the ghosts of the past, policy paralysis like the kinds we've seen before? I mean, state governments are not known to be the best friends of industry, are they?
Well, let's talk about this in two parts. The first is, are you making a simple law or is it the law complicated? If you make the law complicated as it is today, you can't blame the states for going bureaucratic or taking long. So first you need to simplify the law, which is what Mr. Modi was attempting to do, but it was not politically expedient for him to do so. The second part is the corruption and the time taken for the purposes of acquisition, which is happening and is quite seen all over the country. I think that's a different thing. I think we can still modify those regulations and see to it that they are expedited. But they are both connected to each other, but they are actually different.
Right, Mr. Hiranandani, let you have the last question on this, which is, do you think when it comes to land law now, it's been evidently proven that at the end of the day, this government is no different from UPA too. Everyone thought this government has a huge mandate and that they will push through tough economic reforms. But at the end of the day, political compulsions is what's driving decision making. Is that the big picture? Is that how you're reading this move?
I'm sad to say what you're saying is correct. Polity has won. Economic decisions have failed. I'm not against the farmer getting more money, but I think the problem which is speeding up the process has definitely taken a hit. So I think economics has failed, polity has won. Having said that, you must understand one thing. When it comes to the issue of wanting to implement, if the intention of the bureaucracy and the government is to really do it quick enough, it can still happen. So it all depends on how the bureaucracy and the government machinery now takes upon itself to handle these projects. And if you can speed it up, and which governments have shown that they can do it, we have seen it in the case of Mumbai-Pune Road, we saw it in the flyovers of Mumbai, we have seen it in many projects earlier run by the state government, even when things were different. So I think there is a possibility to do so, but it's increasingly difficult.
Mr. Hiranandani, thanks for joining in with that perspective on Business Tonight. Let's get you another corporate view then. Hari Bhartia, former president of CII and a leader at Jubilant Foodworks, in exclusive conversation with ET Now's Sumit Chaturvedi.
It is headed for a complete washout because of political reasons. How big a setback this will be?
No, I personally believe this government has moved on reforms at all levels. We need to be patient. We will see the results in the coming months because reform is not something that you do today and tomorrow you see results. If you look at almost all the ministries, things have started to move. And business, I must say, is patient. Business is patient. Inflation is in control. Hopefully, interest rates should be stable or going down, and that will certainly improve. And the global situation, if it starts to improve also, that will give a further impetus to the industry.
So how much will you blame the opposition for stalling the important reforms and legislations in the parliament?
You know, this is a political system, and it's a democracy. I think each political party has the right to discuss, debate, and then conclude on any change or amendment or act that the government wants to bring. So I'm not a politician, but I understand the compulsions of a politician in terms of the constituencies they are dealing with, and but I see there has been movements in the last Parliament session, and hopefully will be some conclusion in this coming one. Thank you.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow, and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.